Hi and welcome into another video on this channel. Today we'll be utilizing AWS and our Terraform to launch EC2 instance through Terraform with some user data, which is a script that can customize our EC2 instance on the launch. So let's hop into the console and work it out. Alright, so we are currently in our Terraform project on our Ubuntu machine. If you didn't see how we approach this Terraform project, I will link some videos down below, but let's go very briefly through that. So we have already a Terraform instantiated. We did an AWS configure with credentials, and we have just a basic provider for AWS in US East 1 region. In our main.tf file, we currently have an S3 bucket, which we will not talk about today and we don't need it right now, but we also have our VPCs. It will be how we approach this VPC will be in a video down below in descriptions. But just to get very briefly through that, we are instantiating our VPC, which we are calling main VPC. We are instantiating public subnet, private subnet, so some internet gateways and route gateways. But actually to create EC2 instance, we'll be mostly considering main VPC and a public subnet, because we want to launch our EC2 instance in this VPC, which was created also through Terraform, and in this public subnet, so that it will be publicly accessible. So let's go down below. I prepared already the code so that you don't need to wait while I type it, and we can stick to going through it and seeing what it actually does, and the code will be available on our blog. So here starts the EC2 block, and there are two resources that we need to create. We will first create a security group. So security group will be like a firewall to our EC2 instance, so it will say what ports it can be accessed on and what are the outbounds and inbounds rules. So we are just using a resource called AWS security group and creating a security group called allow HTTP. We are attaching it to our main VPC ID, so we are referencing this AWS VPC resource .main-vpc.id, so that we can reference the previous resource to attach it to this VPC. And we are creating two rules. Ingress is for inbound traffic, so we will allow for our traffic on port 80, so that we can access an HTTP server from CIDR block of all internet IPs. We are also creating an egress rule. This 0 means all. This 0 here, 2 port, also means all. We will then hop into AWS console, see how it looks. And this protocol -1 also means all. And also on all the IP instances. So then we are instantiating AWS EC2 instance itself. So we have a resource called AWS instance. We will call it Nginx for here our default naming, and we need to give some data. We are giving AMI ID. AMI ID can be taken from the AWS console. I will show you then where we can get this AMI from, and it's just a Linux 2 AMI image. Instance type, we are instantiating T3 micro, but you can, let's say, write it here T3, then you can change it to small, medium, or whatever. We are associating it with a subnet. So subnet ID is another reference as it was to the VPC, so AWS subnet.public subnet. So we are going here, and it's here already. So AWS subnet, public subnet, and .id. So that's it. We are also using associate public IP address flag, so that IPv4 public address would be auto-assigned to this instance. And we are having a security groups array, and we are just referencing this security group for allow HTTP, which we created before. Now we instantiating a user data script. About user data we were talking in other videos, but just to go briefly through that, user data is an attribute that you can pass a shell script to it. So we have here a shebang for bin bash, and it is being used to do some kind of an operation when the instance is being launched. So in this particular example, we are updating the packages list in a package manager for Linux. Then we are installing Nginx. Nginx is a very basic web server. Then we are starting it with systemctl and enabling it so that we can enabling in systemctl means that it will auto start on the system reboot. And then we are creating, using echo command, we are changing the default index.html of Nginx web server so that we are pushing a very basic site with a title briefly.dev and h1 header briefly.dev, so that we will be able to see from the browser or correlate from the terminal that we know that the Nginx is being available from public IP and it has this website. And then we just giving it a tag name of Nginx server, and the last thing we are doing, we are outputting the instance public IP. So after the EC2 instance will be created, we will get public IP in the console so that we don't need to go to AWS and see what the IP is so that we can access it. So let's do Terraform apply. Let's give it a moment to process the state and check the values. Okay, we have a plan 2 to add. So we are expecting that because we want to create a security group and we want to create EC2 instance itself. So let's accept it. Okay, security group is created. Now EC2 is being instantiated. It should take around 20 to 30 seconds. So in the meantime, let's hop into AWS console. So actually, let's skip back because it's already created. So it took like 14 seconds. And we have an output of our instance public IP address. So let's hop into the console and see how it looks like. So firstly, let's go to VPC and security groups. So here we have this allow HTTP security group attached to our VPC that we created. Description, allow HTTP traffic, everything was written in Terraform. So here is our security group. So we have our inbound rule for TCP port 80 on all IPs and our outbound rule on all, and destination all. So this corresponds to this ingress rule and this egress rule. So let's hop back. Let's navigate to EC2. Let's go to instances running. And here there is our instance. Nginx server, T3 micro, as we wanted, and public IP 54.158, ending with 119. And as you can see, it is this output, exactly the same IP address. And here it was created using Terraform, so Nginx server name. One thing that we can right now check would be to see if our page is available. So first let's do it through terminal. Let's take this IP and let's do a curl, and we can see we are getting the briefly.dev web page. Let's go here and let's write it here also. And as you can see, it's already created. So we know that our user data script worked, our security group worked, our EC2 instance worked, and our output is also proper. So one more thing that we wanted to discuss is how to get AMI ID. So actually we can go even here to launch instance, and when you will be checking out some different systems, AMI ID is available here. So it will be different for each individual system, and it will be also different from the region, because the ID is specific to some specific image, but also in a specific region. So that actually completes today's video. I hope you learned something new, and see you next time.